Okay, welcome back. We're on page 271 talking about this little bullet list of all the things you would consider in the planning phase of your cost estimate. So, level of accuracy, unit of measure. Next one talks about the organizational procedure. Maybe your organization has work breakdown structures that are put together. It's very likely that, for example, if you're in an organization that charges customers for their, like you're an outsourced company, right? And so you're an outsourced company that's working on 5 different projects with different companies, then they have like cost accounting codes that you have to charge your time against. So your WBSs may be coded to a customer account. So it's not just programming, getting requirements. It's getting requirements for customer A, Okay, so it could be your WBSs are designed for cost accounting as well as the normal kinds of things that we're talking about. The actual procedures here, how do you go about getting money? If you don't understand what the codes are, you don't understand how to ask. Controls threshold. Again, this is like plus or minus 10% or whatever it is. We're going to talk a little bit more detail about the different levels of cost estimates, how it gets better as you move along through the process, and what's the acceptable threshold before you have to ring the alarm bell saying something is wrong. The next one is performance measures. If your company has some agreed upon performance measures for employees, okay, that would be kind of come in there. They're talking about using earned value management. Just nod your head because we'll get to that in a minute. But earned value management is a pretty good technique for determining where you are in performance of a project. Reporting formats and frequencies. Yeah, you need to know how you're going to report your costs. Does the budget people want some sort of a thing so they can bill the customer, right? If this is a third-party organization, they're going to bill the customer once a month, maybe? I don't know. So what's their procedure for recording those things? What's the frequency? Do they need it daily, monthly, weekly? Okay. And then, of course, the last one is like the process descriptions. Your cost management plan should define an awful lot of terms associated with what it is you're doing. Okay, so let's skip to the first one in the list after planning, on page 271 is the estimating the costs. So basically there are different types of cost estimates. And so there's multiple ways. There's multiples? Let me think about that a minute. There's multiple ways to come up with multiple cost estimates. I tell you what, let's just ignore that and keep moving. There are 3 ways you can do cost estimates. The first one is like just a rough order magnitude kind of thing. This is like at the very beginning, not at this phase, but at the very beginning when I'm putting together a project, I can say, I think it's going to cost about. Okay, so very early in the life cycle, it could be even, years before the project is completion. And so you need this so you can compare projects. I have 2 projects that are going to be doing wonderful things, and one of them's going to cost $1 million, one of them is going to cost $3 million, and I don't have $3 million. I need to know that so I can approve this guy and not that guy. So it doesn't have to be accurate. It has to basically be something where I can see rough order of magnitude. The quantity, the actual number, is not all that important. What's important is comparing. This one costs twice as much as that one. Okay, you know that. It's not what the number is. If this is 5 and this is 10 versus this is 50 and versus 100, that part's not important. What's important is I can compare them side by side. So how accurate? They're saying like minus 50 to plus 100%. In other words, it's just a starting number for comparing other projects. That's it. Okay. From a budgetary thing, so I've got this thing kind of sort of ready, and I'm almost got it approved, right? So I'm putting some effort into it, and I'm sitting down. I say, okay, I think we're going to do this one, rather than just being pie in the sky. Here's a list of all the projects in my portfolio. I've zeroed in and said, okay, we're going to do this one. Work me up a final cost estimate before I approve it. All right, now this one needs to be a little better, right? So it puts dollar amounts in the budget, and they're talking 10 to 25% accuracy rate. And so this is probably what you use to get your budget. Okay, I need a budget for the project. Here's how much it's going to cost. And then later on, as the project is going on, you're going to be producing what they call the definitive budget. And this one is, here are the details. Here is exactly how many man hours I'm expecting, and here's exactly how much what the pay is going to be, and here's what I expect them to get a pay raise in January, and here's how much it's going to cost, and very, very detailed stuff. And we're talking 5 to 10% threshold on how accurate that is. Okay, so I kind of like this. This is a good way of doing it. Now there are other techniques, and they talk about the order of magnitude versus the concept versus the preliminary versus definitive and versus the control. I'm not going to go into that detail, but this is not the only 3. There could be 5 or whatever your organization has. You're going to have to stick to. Okay, so obviously for an awful lot of IT related projects, the large portion of this is going to be labor, right? Okay, cool. So there's table 7.2. And so here's how one of the things they did. They figured, okay, this is going to be some 5-year project, and I'm going to have some IT folks and some marketing folks and some reservations and contractors and here's all of the labor costs associated with these things. So yes, it's going to be lots of labor costs. So the reason for doing it this way is you basically have to calculate this basically in an Excel spreadsheet, because if they negotiated a higher salary for your workers, you need to be able to go into the Excel spreadsheet and go doink, and poof, produces a new one, or something else happens. So you have to be able to show your you have to be able to show your math. You can't just say, well, here's the labor cost. That's not going to cut it. You're going to have to say, here's a spreadsheet. Here's all the trades I'm using. Here's all the quantities, and here's all their salaries. And then you put it in a spreadsheet. So when things change, either the quantities change or the unit price, in this case, like hourly rate, you'd be able to come across and make some changes. Okay. Cost estimating tools. On page 273, they talk about some 3 different types, and these types are not really different than we talked about last time in the scheduling. So basically it goes like this. The top-down approach or the analogous approach. Okay, analogous means we've done this one time before, so I kind of sort of have a good idea how much it's going to cost. Okay, so we've done these before. We've done these typical database app before, and so I know exactly how much it's going to cost. Great, top down. Bottom up is I really don't know how much it's going to cost, so let's actually start with the building blocks. I'm going to need 4 of those and 6 of those and 8 of those, and build it up. So when you sum up all of the sub costs, you come up with the total cost estimate. So, top down is we've done this. I kind of sort of know. Bottom up is let me just go ahead and calculate all the costs individually, and we'll sum them together. Cool. And then the last one is what's called a parametric technique, and the parametric technique basically uses a formula. So I have some sort of a magic formula that tells me, here's the complexity of this task. And so I run it through this little formula. It'll tell me how many hours it's going to take to produce this, whatever it is. So somebody has figured out if a database has, 17 tables and 87 stored procedures, then run through this little formula and presto changeo, that equates to 172 hours. Okay. If you have one of those guys, you're good to go. If not, well, you don't have that. So they talk about typical problems on page 274, and you can probably imagine. One of the problems is people that are doing the estimates aren't good at it, all right? And so they don't put much effort into these things. They have this defeatist attitude of, well, it's a software project, so dang, why bother to put any effort into this? It's going to be wrong. Well, that's wrong. It's not correct, and you need to do better. So spend the amount of time you need to put together your estimate. Okay, you need it. Lacking of estimating experience, yeah, if this is your first one, you're probably going to make a mess. You really need to get experience with this. And of course, you can always go grab somebody to help you out, right? The built-in bias for underestimating most humans, I mean, you've probably experienced this in real life. you're getting ready to run off to a party and you yell out to your partner, okay, you ready? And the partner says, yeah, I'll be ready in 15 minutes. Does that mean in 15 minutes you're going to be out the door? Maybe. Because humans just have this innate sense of, that shouldn't take very long. It's only going to take me 5 minutes to do this. And in reality, it takes 15, 20, or 30 minutes. And so you need to kind of think about that. Fight your normal instincts to underestimate. And here's another issue with regard to budgeting. No matter what level you pick, the order of magnitude guy, the budget guy, right, or the whatever technique you use, the definitive, that point, no matter which one you pick, management is always going to want something better. They're in the money business. That's what they do for a living. And so they're going to want more detail than what you've got, regardless of what level you pick. That's just the solid fact on how the world works. And they kind of sort of don't ever forget the original estimate. So if you came in with a rough order of magnitude and you said, well, it's going to cost $1 million. And then you came back and said, well, no, it's going to cost 1.2. And then you come back a little later and say, okay, we're ready to approve the project. It's going to cost 1.4. They're going to remember that one, the 1.0. They're going to say, well, you told me 6 months ago that it was going to be $1 million. You go, well, yeah, that was just a preliminary, order of magnitude estimate. But they're going to remember that number. They're going to try to hold you to it. That's just the way it works, unfortunately. And of course, you could kind of look at this and say, okay, so I would be best served if my preliminary estimates were actually a little high. Man. Now, you don't want to overdo that, because if you made your estimate too high, then they may not approve your project. They may move on to one that costs less. But once you kind of got that mindset, you need to be able to set yourself up so that your management staff is got the same level of expectation as you do. Okay, that's tough. On page 275, they talk about how to develop a cost estimate. Okay. And to tell you the truth, if you've never done one of these things, the best way to do it is to study as a good example. Go find an example and look at it. That's kind of sort of the work. So they talk about a bullet list on page 276. I'm going to let you read that on your own. But basically, it goes through several little things. I'll pick out a few of them to talk about. One is, the proof of concept. When you're putting together an estimate, you kind of sort of need to know, is this going to work? Are we going to do this? In the example of this case study, the proof of concept would have been, let's go ahead and get like one kind of going, or maybe let's demo this one piece, and that way I know that this technology is going to work before I blow through the budget. That would be a good idea. And the other one is, going down this little bullet list, the goal is to have 100 of these little handheld units. And so maybe I don't buy all 100 of them all at once. Maybe I buy 20 of them in a batch and make sure everything's working until we're ready to implement, and then I'll go ahead and order all the rest of them. In this case, they already have some WBSs in mind. They're going to track the costs by month. That's because that's how they want to set it up. They're going to allocate their costs by trade. Remember, not by person. Whereas here's a designer, and here's a programmer, and here's a database person. Whatever it is. And so by actual trade craft, you're going to purchase the devices. You're going to have to remember to include the licensing fees for these things. These things are going to require some sort of testing, so you need to include that. Training is not free. Now, training has two things: a direct cost and an indirect cost. Direct cost is how much you're going to have to spend to get training materials put together and conduct a class. And indirect is they're losing productivity while they're in your class. Okay, this is a good place to stop for the 15-minute mark. We'll finish this off in just a few.